By the time the bank's lawyer wrote the check, it came to $468,000. The check was made out to Edmund Pell of rural Caswell County, North Carolina, and it was delivered by certified courier to his front porch on a Friday morning in late November. Edmund signed for it with a hand that still had not fully recovered from the stroke he had suffered 3 months earlier. He set the envelope down on the small table beside his chair. He did not open it for 2 days. Here is how it started. Edmund Pell was 69 years old. He owned 204 acres in the rolling hill country north of Yanceyville, and he had owned every one of those acres outright for the better part of 3 decades. He had not inherited the land. His father had been a sharecropper in Person County and had died at 51 with a debt of $82 to the country store and nothing else to his name. Edmund had begun working other men's farms at 14 years old. He had bought his first parcel, 26 acres of overgrown pasture, at 28, with money he had saved over 14 years of cutting tobacco, raising hogs for other men, and one winter spent hauling pulpwood for a paper mill outside Roxborough. He had bought the rest in pieces over the next 22 years. He had paid off the last mortgage in 1996 and had not borrowed a dollar against any of it since. He had married a woman named Pearl Hamlin in 1981. Pearl had worked 31 years as a bookkeeper for a feed mill in town, and she had kept the books for the farm with the same precision she had kept the books for the mill. She had filed every piece of paper that had ever come into the house. She had a metal cabinet in the small workshop attached to the back of the kitchen, and the cabinet had 4 drawers, and every drawer was full of folders organized by year. Pearl had died in the spring of 2022 of a cancer that had taken her in 8 months. Edmund had buried her in the small cemetery behind the Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, where her people had been buried for 4 generations. He had not opened the metal cabinet since. The stroke came on a Tuesday morning in late August at 11 minutes past 9. Edmund had been standing at the kitchen sink rinsing out a coffee cup. His left arm went numb first, then his left leg. He sat down on the linoleum floor and he stayed there for 47 minutes before his neighbor, a woman named Lorraine Tate, who came by every morning to check on him after Pearl's death, found him and called the volunteer ambulance service. He spent 11 days at the regional hospital in Greensboro. The damage was real, but not catastrophic. The doctor said he would walk again with a cane within 2 months. They said his speech would return slowly and was already coming back by the time he was discharged. They said he should not live alone for at least 60 days, and that he should have someone with him during waking hours through the autumn. Lorraine moved into the spare bedroom on the day he came home. She was 63 years old, a widow herself, and she had known Pearl for 30 years. She did not ask for payment. The bank's first letter arrived 19 days after Edmund's stroke. It came in a thick envelope with the logo of Carolina Pioneer Bank embossed in silver foil. The letter was addressed to Edmund Pell. It was signed by an attorney named Vincent Galway, identified at the bottom as senior counsel for the bank's commercial recovery division. The letter informed Edmund that the bank had recently completed an internal audit of its archived agricultural lending portfolio, and that this audit had revealed a balance owed by Mr. Pell of $198,000 under a 1987 commercial agricultural note. The letter stated that the note had been carried on the bank's books for 36 years without active servicing due to what it called a clerical oversight, and that the matter was now being referred to litigation. The letter gave Edmund 21 days to respond. Lorraine read the letter aloud to Edmund 3 times. He could not hold it himself yet. The fingers of his left hand were still uncooperative. He listened with his head tilted slightly, the way a man listens when he is trying to remember something from very long ago. "Edmund," Lorraine said, "did you ever take a loan from Carolina Pioneer in 1987? He thought for a long time before he answered. "No," he said. The word came slowly. "I did not." "Are you certain?" "I am certain." "Then we need a lawyer." The lawyer they found was a woman named Rosalind Ford. She practiced in a small office above a hardware store in the county seat. She was 41 years old, had spent 11 years at a large firm in Raleigh before opening her own practice in 2019, and she had a reputation in the county for taking on bank cases and refusing to settle them quickly. Lorraine drove Edmund to her office on a Thursday afternoon. Rosalind read the letter once. She read it again. Then she set it down on her desk and she looked at Edmund for a long moment before she spoke. Mr. Pell, I have to be honest with you. I have read about a dozen letters like this one in the past 2 years. They are coming out of 3 or 4 banks across this part of the state. The pattern is identical. They claim a note from 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. They claim the file has been dormant. They claim a balance that no one ever paid. And they send the letter to people who are old, who are alone, and who have just gone through something difficult. How do they know? Lorraine said. They watch the obituaries. They watch the property tax records. They watch the hospital admission filings, which are not as private as people think. They are looking for a moment of vulnerability, and then they send the letter. Edmund did not say anything. He looked at the wall behind Rosalind's desk for a while. Then he looked back at her. I never borrowed from them. I believe you. The question is what they are going to produce in court. Mr. Pell, do you have records of your loans from that period? My wife kept everything. Where? In a metal cabinet in the workshop off the kitchen. Rosalind looked at Lorraine. Lorraine looked at Edmund. Mr. Pell, Rosalind said, I would like to come out to your house tomorrow morning if that is all right with you. I would like to look in that cabinet. He nodded. The cabinet was in the back corner of the workshop behind a long workbench Edmund's father-in-law had built in 1972. The workshop itself had been added to the back of the kitchen in 1989, a small room with a slanted roof and a single window that looked out onto the back pasture. The bench was solid maple, scarred and stained from 40 years of small repairs. The cabinet stood beside it, 4 drawers high, painted a dark green that had faded to almost gray. The handles were brass and tarnished. Pearl had bought the cabinet at a farm sale in 1986. She had been 29 years old. Edmund sat in a chair by the window. Lorraine stood beside him. Rosalind knelt in front of the cabinet and pulled open the bottom drawer first. Pearl's system was clear within 30 seconds. Each folder was labeled by year in her small, careful handwriting. Within each folder, dividers separated the contents by category: taxes, equipment, livestock, banking, miscellaneous. The drawers covered the years 1981 through 2021. The 1986 and 1987 folders were where they should have been, in the second drawer from the bottom. Rosalind pulled the 1987 folder out and set it on the workbench. She opened it. She went through it page by page. There was a deposit record from First Citizens Bank in Yanceyville for a livestock sale in March. There was a tractor repair invoice from May. There was a tax filing from April. There were 3 pages of receipts from the feed cooperative. There was, at the back of the folder, a single page from Carolina Pioneer Bank dated September 12, 1987. Rosalind held it up to the window. It was a denial letter. The letter informed Edmund Pell that his application of August 30, 1987 for a commercial agricultural note in the amount of $198,000 had been declined by the bank's loan committee. The letter cited the bank's then-current debt-to-asset ratio requirements. It was signed by an officer named H.R. Whitcomb, who Rosalind would later determine had been Carolina Pioneer's regional vice president from 1984 to 1991 and had retired to Florida in 1995, where he had died of natural causes in 2008. The amount on the denial letter was the same amount Carolina Pioneer was now claiming Edmund owed. Mr. Pell, Rosalind said, did you remember this letter? I remembered being denied a loan that year. I bought the south parcel with cash from a tobacco crop and a private note from a man named Floyd Ashby. Pearl had told me to apply at the bank first to see what they would offer. They turned me down. We did the deal with Floyd instead. And you have no record of any later loan from Carolina Pioneer? There was no later loan. Mr. Pell, the letter the bank sent you claims a note for the exact amount they denied you. Their own document in your wife's files proves the loan was never made. Edmund looked at the letter. He looked at it for a long time. Then he looked at Lorraine. Pearl kept every one, he said. Every single one. She used to tell me, you never know what you are going to need to prove someday. Rosalind took the denial letter and the entire 1987 folder back to her office that afternoon. She made certified copies of every page. She drafted a single document over the following 4 days. a formal demand letter addressed to Vincent Galway at Carolina Pioneer Bank, citing the bank's own 1987 denial document by date and signing officer, and demanding within 48 hours a written withdrawal of all claims, a written apology, and an opening offer of damages. She attached a draft complaint, fully prepared for filing in the federal district court, alleging fraudulent debt collection practices, elder abuse under North Carolina law, and intentional infliction of emotional distress against a stroke patient in his 4th week of recovery. The demand letter was hand-delivered by a paralegal to the bank's main branch in Greensboro on a Tuesday morning at 11:45. The bank's response came on Wednesday afternoon at 2 minutes after 1, 48 minutes inside the deadline. The speed of the response told Rosalind everything she needed to know. The bank's outside counsel, a different firm than the in-house attorney who had signed the original letter, called her directly. They did not want to litigate. They wanted to know what number would close the matter. Rosalind named a figure. The bank's counsel called back the next morning. The figure was accepted in full. The settlement included a written withdrawal of all claims, a formal apology signed by the bank's chief executive officer, the dismissal of Vincent Galway from his position, and damages in the amount of $468,000 paid within 30 days, in exchange for a confidentiality clause that Rosalind insisted include a specific carve-out. Edmund Pell retained the right to discuss the matter publicly with any other bank customer who came to him with a similar letter, and the right to provide his documentation to the North Carolina Commissioner of Banks. The bank's counsel objected to the carve-out. Rosalind held firm. The bank's counsel called back 2 hours later and accepted the terms. The Commissioner of Banks opened a review of Carolina Pioneer's Commercial Recovery Division on the first Monday of December. By the end of the following March, the division had been disbanded. 41 other letters that had been mailed to elderly farmers across 3 counties were formally rescinded. Vincent Galway surrendered his bar license rather than face disciplinary proceedings. Edmund signed for the certified envelope on his front porch on a Friday morning in late November. He set it on the table beside his chair. He did not open it for 2 days. When he finally did open it on a Sunday afternoon with Lorraine sitting across from him and a small fire going in the wood stove, he read the cover letter once. He folded it back into thirds. He set the check on top of it. He looked at the check for a long time without saying anything. Then he stood up, slowly, with his cane, and he walked into the kitchen. He picked up the telephone on the wall. He dialed a number from memory. It was the number of a man named Wallace Pruitt, who had worked for him on the farm for 29 years, who had retired in 2018 with no pension and no savings, and who lived in a small rented house on the other side of the county. Wallace was 74 years old. His wife was on dialysis 3 times a week. Edmund spoke to him for 3 minutes. He told him that a check was coming. He told him the amount. He told him to use it for whatever he needed. He told him not to argue because he did not have the strength to argue, and because Pearl would have wanted it this way, and because Wallace had stood beside him for 29 years on land that had not been easy and had not paid much, and had asked for everything a man had to give. Then he hung up the phone and he walked back into the front room, and he sat down in his chair across from Lorraine, and he did not say anything more for the rest of the afternoon, because there was nothing more that needed to be said. Tell me in the comments, would you have given the money away the same week you received it, or would you have held on to it first? I'll see you next story. Paste your script.